I'm Major John Gosper. I'm with the Lexington Fire Department, and I'm a major in charge of health and safety for the department. I was in the United States Navy, served aboard the USS Cunningham, a guided missile destroyer out of Norfolk, Virginia.
My name is Davina Warner. I'm a social worker senior. I work as a family evaluator in the Friend of the Courts office. I served in the United States Navy from 1981 to 1987, and I was a petty officer second class at the time of my discharge.
I'm Gary Terry. I work in computer services. I'm a telecom support specialist. I work on the telephones for the city government. I was in the Army from August of '68 till the 3rd of April of 1971.
At the time I enlisted straight out of high school. I could not afford to go to college at that time and wanted to do something further, to learn a trade, to learn what I could do as a career later on.
Well, my father served in the Navy, and I was actually born at Balboa Naval Hospital in San Diego. And as a child, I remember playing dress up in his old Navy uniforms. And from that point on, I kind of had the bug, I guess, and wanted to be in the Navy. And I decided I wanted to serve my country in some branch of the military, and since my dad had served in the Navy.
I enlisted. I had discussed enlisting anyway, but when I went and took my physical and passed it, I found out they were drafting every fourth person in the Marine Corps, which I had no wish to go to the Marine Corps, so that's why I enlisted at that time.
My ship was the guided missile destroyer Cunningham, and it was out of Norfolk, Virginia. I did 2 tours in the Caribbean, 1 tour in the Persian Gulf, 1 tour in the Mediterranean, and 2 tours in the North Atlantic. We were in the Persian Gulf in 1987 to protect oil tankers during the Iran-Iraq War. Many people might recall that it was a dangerous time over there. We had 1 ship that actually got hit by 2 missiles, the USS Stark. My ship was rescue and assistance for that ship. We were the first ship on scene to render aid to the members of the Stark after they got hit by the missiles.
Well, I did basic training at Recruit Training Center in Orlando, Florida, which was also called Navy World, down there around Disney World and everything. I also spent 6 months at the Defense Information School, which was at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana at the time. 3 years for Fleet Activities Sasebo, Japan, where I worked for the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service. And then my last 2 years were at Naval Station San Diego, where I worked for the Chief of Naval Information on a program called Navy News This Week. When I worked in San Diego, I was a West Coast correspondent for Navy News This Week, which I wrote stories, found stories, and was on-air talent, edited those stories for pieces that covered the Navy fleet from Washington State to Southern California. A lot of the stories I did at that time that I was really drawn to were stories about the social issues that affected military personnel, like separation from family during the holidays, the work that the Navy was doing with students that would come out to the ships and learn about the Navy. It was an effort to try to get them interested in science and math. And then also an Upward Bound program where they helped at-risk kids get interested in school. So those were some really rewarding stories.
I was a fixed station cryptographic repairman. I worked on equipment that coded and decoded messages being sent to different places in Vietnam. And I was in a pretty large base camp, which was lucky. There wasn't a whole lot of action there. There were a few mortar attacks and rocket attacks, but it was a pretty good place to be. I was in the central part of the country, close to the coast, so the weather was, for Vietnam standards, was not too bad. It was hot, but not as bad as it was in a lot of places. I remember that Vietnam, of course, was the big thing, and you just remember I remember landing in a commercial jet, and when they opened the doors, the heat and the humidity and the smell came in. It was a tropical country, so there were a lot of odors you weren't used to, and you knew it was going to be a long year, which it was.
The military or the Navy was very key in a lot of experiences in life. I learned a lot of things. In fact, the USS Stark was the first time I ever fought a fire, and learning on a fire brigade in the Navy led me to this job and directed me toward the fire department. And so many of the decisions that I did in the Navy led to my career now, and it's been a very successful career over the last 23 years. And it all goes back to serving in the Navy where it started.
At the time, I didn't realize it, but I think the interest I had in the social issues that were affecting military personnel and those outside of the military and what the military was doing transformed into a strong interest in social work, which is my career now with the city government.
Well, you learn to adapt to a lot of stuff, except, you know, you had to deal with things the way they were and accept it and just go ahead and do your job, and that helped. And plus the training I had and the work I did was the reason I wound up in the telecommunications industry when I got out.